Welcome back to the Three Benchwarmers Podcast, where we discuss all things Detroit sports. Now, today, unfortunately, we're missing our third benchwarmer. Austin cannot, unfortunately, make it to this episode.
Yeah, it's a bit of a
Um,
coach's decision there, but
yeah,
no, I'm just
but
kidding. He
it'll
deserved
just
it.
be us two for this week. There's maybe not as much to discuss in terms of, all fronts. So if anything, this is not a bad week to me to be shorthanded. But speaking of shorthandedness, the Red Wings are continuing to choke away the playoffs. Mark,
I just thought that loss to the Bruins was very impactful. The last two times I went against the Bruins this year, both losses, both games that, could potentially decide the last wild card spot, could potentially decide just a general playoff spot, but no, they had a good win against the Canadians earlier this week, and they put BTA against Calgary. But to be fair, Calgary is not the best team right now, so it's more of the fact can the Red Wings continue to just hold on to what they have? They built a good advantage at the beginning of the year. They like to do this. We've said this before. We've nailed the hammer home on this one. They will build up an early advantage in the season, give themselves a points boost, and then lose it all because the pressure gets to them.
it's not just in as a season, right? You see this basically every game individually, where even last night they were up in the third period, and what happens? They sell their lead, and I feel like every other loss that I see happen, the same thing. Like we're winning, we're controlling the game, and then all of a sudden it collapses when it matters the most. And it's been a common trend for the past three or so seasons, and it makes me wonder if it's something to do with if it's more than just like unluckiness. Maybe the team isn't built correctly. Maybe the leaders aren't leading the way they're supposed to be. You go into questioning Dylan Larkin and Moritz Seider, or the coaching. Obviously, I mean, we had a coaching change midway through that season 2 years ago, but you start to question that as well.
The
I mean, we talked about it on our episode last week about the constant just state of Detroit sports and being mid. But I don't know if that has a role. I honestly, there's no answers to the question of why the Red Wings fall off so drastically every single year in March.
Yeah, it has to be a culture thing. It has to be something in the locker room. It's the same group of guys, essentially the same group of core guys for the last 3 years. And the last 3 years, you're seeing the same thing. Granted, you said the coaching change happened, but it seems like that trend has continued um, you know, even with the new coach. So it's a whole debacle or mystery of what is happening or what is being said to the players because they're the same guys, right? It's the same Larkin, it's the same Sider, Raymond, DeBrinket. They're able to go out there, and it's not like they lose a leg or lose an arm in March. No, I don't know what it is. It has to be something mentality wise. Honestly, that's the only thing that can explain it at this point. I'm not saying that their mentality is just completely ruined, but I don't know what it is. Maybe they get nervous. Maybe they think that there's pressure on them to succeed, and that's what's making them, fall apart. But something has to change.
Right, and I think one of the things that we need to see coming from them in this next coming slate of games, obviously, not the most difficult schedule, not the easiest one either. I mean, playing say the Sabres and Penguins, those aren't layups, but then at the same time, you have a chance to come back after the loss from Boston and beat Ottawa in 2 days time. Um, you need to see some sort of intensity because it feels like they're playing as if it's the beginning of the season when it's obviously not. Like every game matters now. That game against the Boston Bruins essentially took them out of a wild card spot if you count games in hand. Obviously, the Flyers and the Senders still have a game in hand compared to the Red Wings, so they're right on that border. Obviously, a win yesterday would have been huge. They would have been a game and a half ahead in that wild card spot, and also catching up to the Montreal Canadiens, who are at 86 points, so two
Who they
points
also
higher than
beat.
them.
So
Just need to see, yeah, you just need to see that intensity from them. I just like the same way people talk about them in terms of star ability, just like just the most mid team possible. Essentially, is what I'm trying to get to. Like the Red Wings are built to have like a bunch of role players and a bunch of no names just perform like at a 6 out of 10 every single game, and then somehow get their way to the point of the season where they're right on the edge of the playoffs, and it just comes down to a couple of games. But if those couple of games you don't play well enough, or you don't rather maybe not playing well is the issue, but you don't show enough intensity and care even, then what's even the point of watching the entire season? I mean, it's gotten to a point where I'm starting to lose interest because it happens. Happens every season. It's nothing new. Like I'm not surprised that the Red Wings are collapsing anymore.
yeah, well, I did like the addition of Justin Folk to try to do something. He's been playing well enough. He scored shortly after he got traded here, so at least they're semi trying. But at this point, there may be something wrong with the core if you go but like season after season after season and not seeing that much difference. But we'll move on to a team that has the whole season ahead of them. They also kept essentially the same core of guys with a few fillers in the Tigers. Opening day is this week. They play the Padres, and that home opener is the week after. So don't get to see the Tigers in Comerica for a little bit, but it's exciting to see the season actually start.
Right. And obviously there's hope coming into the season with the major changes in our pitching rotation. People are saying that it might be the best or one of the best rotations in the league, if not the country. So yeah, there's a lot of anticipation because obviously with the whole Scooble situation, you don't know what that's going to look like if he must. I think assuming he's going to start this Thursday, what that's if he performs up to his ability in these first coming couple of weeks. If there's talks about him, having off days and maybe getting injured, so um, that's like a storyline to look out for going into the season, and then as well as our younger pieces, because obviously we didn't really do anything to improve our batting, which I think is a major flaw in this team. You saw that in the postseason last season. Um, but obviously Max Clark and McGonigal being two like main prospects that have a shot at making it into the rotation, or into the majors from our prospects. Watching how they perform and seeing if they even get a shot, which I hope they do, because man, sticking with the same thing that we saw last season is I don't think is going to work. And even if even if Scooble doesn't get injured, even if Scooble performs at his highest abilities, and same thing goes with Fromber and Verlander and the rest of the pitching staff, it's not going to matter when we can only score one run in 15 innings, like a certain game last season. So those are like the two main things I think we need to watch out for going into the season.
If I had to put a prediction on it, I really do think the Tigers should win around 90 games. As we said, as we've been hitting home, the batting rotation has kind of stayed majority the same group of guys, but the pitching has gotten better. So I think from 87 to 90 isn't a monster leap, something very obtainable. The pitching, night in and night out will be more consistent on a higher level. So if let's say for example Riley Green doesn't strike out as much as he did last year, and some of the guys deeper in the rotation, maybe Javi Baez has a better year than he has. He's been getting slowly better and better with the Tigers. So hopefully he keeps up that trend and he goes back to his Cubs self, which is, that's an ask, but I think the absolute ceiling for this team, they could. I think a 2 seed in the playoffs would be like ceiling, maybe a 1 seed. But I think the Blue Jays are also just very, very good. So I guess we'll have to wait and see as the season goes on. Again, very long season, anything can happen. So
Right, and if we just look at the season, I guess then the goal is to win the division. But then once we get into the postseason, that's a completely whole different like season essentially, like entirely different. Um, so I guess their depth is a strength because they've had a lot of players due to injuries and other circumstances play, get starting minutes, and get good minutes, get uh, good chances to play, get some at bats, um, and things of that nature. So I would say that is a strength of this team, and that would help them perform better in the season. But again, all that matters, and we've seen this in the past 2 seasons, all that matters is the postseason. Because as soon as you get to the postseason, you need your stars and best players to perform. So I know that's forever away, but it's gonna be interesting to see if an emerging leader comes out. I mean, 2 years ago we thought Riley Green would be that individual. He obviously ended the season last year not too great of a way. Javi Baez obviously, like you were talking about. As for pitching, Terry Skubal, if he wants to, if he has the motivation to continue playing with the Tigers and doesn't sit out half the season just so he can get money from signing a contract. Um, so there's again it I'm gonna be paying attention not to like the team's performance overall because I've been doing that the last 2 seasons. Our team, the Tigers are based on their players and based on their talent should make the postseason. I'll be paying attention to
listen,
specific players
I'm not
and seeing if
even worried
they can
about
go.
making the postseason, right? And here's the thing, they
Oh,
should. I'm not worried about not making it. Is what I meant to say. But I do think the game against the Padres will tell us a lot. It'll be Tarek Skubal. It'll be everyone at their freshest, everyone at their best. Probably, like 100% should be 100% full strength Tigers. You can see where their cap is against a team that has the stars in Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis. They have talent all around. They made the playoffs last year, so I think it's a very telling game, and it's a great game to open up against. Kind of sets the tone for the rest of the season. Great series to open up with, actually. So
yeah, and it's sort of reminiscent of last season where the Tigers started their season off against the Dodgers. If I remember correctly, they got swept, but it did make us more hopeful just because they competed. I think every game, the first game in particular, I think it went to like the 13th inning. Again, the Tigers choking away at other games, or Detroit sports teams in general choking away games when it matters most. But regardless, hopefully they can show that they are at the level that we expect them to be to start off the season.
yeah, I think we all have high hopes for the Tigers. Best of luck to the guys out there. Pitching rotation is, elite, so hopefully they can carry us to a good record. And you know what? That star power will definitely help in the playoffs if we make it. Hopefully there's no injuries. Moving on to a team that lost some of their star power, unfortunately, in the Pistons. Now, we had brought up concerns about the Pistons last week when they had Cade, when we assumed that he would be healthy throughout the whole playoff run. Now this is a blow to every Piston fan, to every Pistons fan's hopes, because they were in a little bit of a downturn. To be fair, in the recent parts of the year, as in the last 2.5-ish weeks, they've been playing nobodies. They've played the Nets, and actually every time they had a little bit of competition, they lost. They played the Heat, they lost. They played the Raptors, they lost. But Sixers, Nets again, Grizzlies, Wizards, Warriors. I mean, these are all teams that they should be beating. But the fact now that Cade is out and the schedule does ramp up a little bit to end the year, granted the Pistons have clinched a top 6 seed, no plan. They are a playoff team, so congrats to them. Congrats on 50 wins. Already improved on last year at this point in the season, which is phenomenal. Thank you, J.B. Um, but no, I'm worried. I'm worried. Cade is out indefinitely, is what they said. There's not even a time frame. A collapsed lung is crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, out of all the
That's like
things.
a 2K injury. Literally, like,
Yeah, I guess what I'll say and what I've heard is that collapsed lung, like it, the fact that the injury wasn't announced within the first day means hints at the fact that he, hasn't been dealing with too much discomfort or like it wasn't too obvious that it had happened, which I mean, that tends to be a sign that it isn't as severe. So hopefully, when lower grade collapsed lungs, as they say, don't tend to take too long to heal, and hopefully he'll be back by the playoffs if that's the case. But yeah, no, he's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So for the majority of the rest of the regular season, we won't see him. And being only 4 games ahead of the Celtics, there's a very strong concern that we're not going to end up, getting that 1 seed. But I guess a question that I'll ask is it better for the
I
Pistons
was
to
just
give
about to
up
say.
their 1 seed? Uh, yeah, wait, is it better for the Pistons to give up their 1 seed and get that 2 seed just so we can play the Knicks? Because we saw what happens when the Pistons played against the Cavs, and it didn't look too good. But then obviously, if you look at the games against the Knicks, I mean, I honestly, if it does come out to Pistons versus Knicks series, I don't have any doubts that we're going to lose it again. So, what's your take on that, work?
I genuinely think that the 2 seed might have an easier path. Like, you go first round against the Sixers. Potentially, I'm just going based off seeding, no plan considerations yet, against the Sixers, and then potentially either the Hawks or the Knicks, who the Pistons have shown that they don't have trouble with, and then they need to win, a series. They can win a series against the Celtics or Cavs in the playoffs only because, a lot of the times in the playoffs injuries start to pile up. I like the Pistons depth a lot, but honestly, I think the 2 seed is better in some ways. The Cavs are a very scary team, and as the 1 seed right now, you're primed to play them. They're, 2 games behind the Knicks, 3.5 behind the Celtics. I don't think they'll jump up past them. They're in no danger of losing that 4 seed to the Raptors. It's just not. They're a very scary team. I think avoiding them at all cost is best case scenario. Granted, you go to the Eastern Conference Finals without home court, which could potentially be an issue. But if they make it that far, then they have a chance in the series, in my opinion.
I mean, obviously, all of that is semantics because I know the team shouldn't be trying to go for that 2 seed because if they do, they might fall to a 3 or 4 or 5. And obviously, that's just culturally not good for a team to this is sort of this reminds me of back in the day when as Lions fans we were talking about maybe the Lions should lose an extra game so we don't have to play. I forgot what it was, but it was 2 seasons ago when they went 15-2, and we were talking about how we don't want them to play a team that was getting hot and
The Rams, I
that
think it
that sort of
was.
thing. Um,
Or no.
but I think the idea is ridiculous, but it's a thing that once the Pistons do, choke, as again, I feel like this is a common topic of this episode is you know, Detroit sports teams choking away leads or doing poorly at the end of games. But if they do get that 2 seed, it's gonna be something that, we're thinking about like, oh, maybe it was for the better that we did get that 2 seed. So again, just we were already worried when Cade was playing for the team, and if maybe without Cade, this is like a factory reset. I remember earlier in the season, Cade had an injury. This was like right after we lost that longest winning streak in franchise history, I believe. Um, Cade got injured, and so it was sort of like a reset button, and then after that, the Pistons started playing better again. Hopefully, maybe we can see the same thing occur because they definitely need a reset based on how they've been playing, and it's partially to their own fault, but it's also to the fault of the grinding, grueling schedule that the NBA presents, and they were that that like schedule that 2 weeks ago where they lost a couple of games. They were playing the Spurs twice, the Thunder, the Cavs twice, the Raptors, obviously, the Knicks. Like it was a really rough schedule, and obviously half those games were in Texas, the other half were in like back in the Northeast, and obviously back home in Detroit. So hopefully they can just crawl out of this regular season with a good enough seed that they're satisfied with.
Yeah, I'm not saying they should purposefully tank. I'm saying reality might hit, and they're like, this team is obviously not the same caliber without Cade. Cade is the MVP candidate. Cade is the guy who makes everyone else better. Cade is the guy who gives, Duran his buckets, like, willed him to be an all-star this year. But reality is that one seed is definitely not safe, considering you have to play the Thunder coming up. You have to play the Timberwolves. You have to play the Lakers. You lose a few of those games, and all of a sudden, it's anyone's race for that one seed. So,
Yeah, but and speaking of Jalen Duren actually, and Cade being out in general, the Pistons have won all three games without him. I mean, we did only beat the Wizards twice and then the Curryless Warriors, to be fair, but um, I don't know. Though I felt like I felt some confidence come back, quite honestly, from watching those games. Particularly because I saw how we played without Cade, and obviously with Cade, like you said, we're better. But looking at the this Jalen Duren stats for these games, 36 points, 24 points, 23 points, quite efficient from the field. Obviously, getting rebounds, getting double-digit rebounds as usual. His role has increased during these games, and he's succeeded in taking some of Cade's scoring. And the entire season we've been questioning, and particularly during like the last couple of days before the trade deadline, what is our secondary option to Cade scoring? And we always thought that Jalen Duren isn't that option because he's very reliant on Cade's playmaking ability. So without Cade, if Cade isn't performing, then Jalen Duren won't perform. That obviously hasn't been the case. So if there's one positive thing to that can come out from this is maybe other players' roles increase, and we see a player develop like Malik Beasley did last season, where there's another scoring option. Obviously, Duncan Robinson might hopefully will start performing better, but yeah, Jalen Duren, Duncan Robinson. Tobias Harris, even those guys, hopefully, maybe without Cade, they can, grow their minutes, grow their shot attempts, and as a result, grow their confidence and ability to score. Because really, if we go back to that, that form that we were in 3 weeks ago, where our only option on offense was Cade, there's no way we might not even win a playoff series, quite honestly.
it's I mean, it is a possibility. You do play the Sixers, who we've handed to. I mean, if we drop to the 2 seed, if not, we get an even easier matchup. Teams will be tired, banged up from the play-in. I mean, granted, the Pistons will be tired and banged up, but at least they have the depth, and that's the one thing that the Pistons have been able to rely on all year. And it's going to be the three-point shooting that holds us back. Mark my words, Kevin Huerter, you still blow. Cade is
Yep,
out. We
Kevin
need
Hurt
guard minutes.
0 for 7 in the past 3 games. Obviously, didn't play against the Warriors, but yeah, I don't know what's up with that. So much for bringing in a shooter.
Like, his general performances just aren't even bad. It's just like you cannot make a three, and that's your whole thing. Like, that's your whole identity. That's literally you as a player. That is you
Yep.
as a player. You're supposed to catch it, shoot it. You have no other role. That's what you did for the Hawks. That's what you did really poorly for the Bulls. That's what you did for the Kings. One of those teams in there paid you a crap ton of money, which we haven't even talked about. His contract blows.
Hmm.
I'm done talking about this team. I really do think that this next game against the Lakers will be very telling. Good team. first real challenge without Cade. So we'll see.
Yep.
But these next two teams, they've been playing well. They've been playing, what they've been doing all year. And, the dividends are paying off in Michigan and MSU. Both of them made it to the second week of March, so congrats to both programs. Not that it was completely unexpected, but we'll start on Michigan. They kind of had, as a one seed, you get a much easier path than, what Michigan State had to go through so far. But Michigan had to beat, first four in Howard. And,
who was, by the way, who made like 11 consecutive threes without missing. So I don't know how much, what the ability level or what the difference is between those, double digit seeds when really any team from the bottom five seeds can get hot. Yeah, I guess I'll go a little more into that. And right now actually there's quite an interesting game going on for Michigan. As I'll be talking about their future games coming up next week and the week after. Hopefully, if they make it to the Final Four. Tennessee obviously in a close game with Virginia right now is what I was referring to. Um, the fact that constantly see it teams like, I mean, Howard out of all out of all teams, and then obviously Wisconsin a couple of times, and sorry, this game is really intense. Yeah, well, Wisconsin, Howard, Purdue, all of these teams having amazing shooting nights against Michigan's defense. Makes me think that it might not be a coincidence. And as we've seen so many times in March, um, like a team that goes hot from three is going to win a game, regardless of who they're playing. And
listen, I
that's a
think
concern going
Charles
forward.
Barkley, as much as he doesn't, provide much commentary, he did say that, in a 7-game series, the better team will always win. But this is one game. Anything can happen, Anyone can get hot, anyone can shoot it, whatever. But at the end of the day, with against a 16 seed, and even against St. Louis, Michigan just had more talent. Michigan has been in more close games. They've been against tougher guys. They know how to close out games. And you know what? I think that loss against Purdue really, kicked them in the behind and gave them motivation to just show that there's no weakness. I mean, granted, in the first half against St. Louis, they did look vulnerable. But then they showed that Robbie Avila is just a fraud. And now they have, I think, their first real test in either Texas Tech or Alabama, who I think Alabama is definitely the harder one. Much faster paced team. Doesn't play as much defense, but if Michigan can show that they can slow them down, that would be good. Very good to see out of that program. But, and it looks like if either Virginia or Iowa State get through, they'll have to grind out a defensive battle in the Elite Eight, which, two like polar opposites in terms of tempo. So very telling if Michigan can make it past these teams. And yeah, I mean, I think this is their best chance since 2018 to win the national championship. So,
Well, I'd argue and say 2021 was only a quite I mean that was they were one seed that year. So, or no, sorry, 2020, the year before COVID. Regardless, that was a pretty good. We had a pretty good shot at winning, and then we kind of sold to a UCLA team that was impressive to say the least. But yeah, I'm just concerned. I'm still concerned because even against like both the St. Louis and Howard games, and then obviously the last couple of games of the season, Michigan has started games off slowly and started the second half off slowly. So if they were to let a team like Iowa State or Tennessee, presumably now that they're beating Virginia with less than half a minute to go, um, if one of those teams, um, get to play Michigan and go get hot to start off the game, and obviously Michigan continues to follow the trend that they've been following, they're going to find themselves down double digits to start off the game. And if you're down double digits in the tournament against a team like Iowa State, like a Virginia, like a Tennessee, whoever they play, even Texas Tech or Bama in the Sweet 16, it's going to be very difficult to crawl back. But I guess that is the whole reason the tournament is so enticing is because anything can happen. Um, Obviously, as we're seeing right now with the Tennessee Virginia game. So yeah, that's gonna be something to watch for is how Michigan starts games off. And Cadeau actually has a really large role in that. We saw that against St. Louis, he actually performed really well to start off the game. I believe he scored 10 of his 12 points in the game in the first 5 minutes. So getting a tone setting performance like that from him.
But, it was the
In
polar
in the next
opposite
couple games.
against Howard. He played pretty
Yeah,
poorly, and
right.
that's why they had a slow start. So I know we said this earlier in the year. Elliot Cadeau, you're the guy. You run the offense. Kind of whatever happens because of your performance. So again, Elliot Cadeau. I didn't think he could string together 5 good performances in a row, and we've seen that. We've seen that right now, but it was a bad enough team or not enough talent so that the rest of Michigan's team could do it. But Elliot Cadeau, if you play like that in a game against, an Alabama who can take advantage of a little mistake, or even Texas Tech who has shown that they can beat good teams even without JT Toppin, it's going to be hard. It's going to be so hard to win those games.
Yeah, and I guess on the topic of Elliot Cadeau, a similar player to him that played for Michigan last year, and Trey Donaldson, was just eliminated today. Obviously playing for Miami, lost to Purdue. And following the game, he had something to say presumably about Michigan, and or I guess that hinted at Dusty May in Michigan, within the confines of Dusty May not trusting him. He said something like he said that Miami's current coach was like the only person that trusted him and that wanted to see more from him. And obviously that means that he believes Dusty May sort of kicked him out, or whatever happened. And it's kind of interesting to look at that not from a Trey Donaldson perspective, but as like as a program, like at Michigan as a program, and Dusty May as a whole, because there's obviously been criticism about him, hiring mercenaries instead of, recruiting students, which is obviously what should be the case in college athletics. And this is something that might, raise those critiques about him even more. The fact that he presumably, from what that interview hints at, basically kicked Trey Donaldson out or told him something that caused Trey Donaldson to leave the program, um, is quite concerning for Michigan fans, for the Michigan athletic program. I just want to know, what your take on that, Mark, is because I know like Michigan State fans, for instance, they are obviously have the whole built versus bot take, and that Izzo, is ethical, while Dusty Make, is only hires like 23-year-olds to play basketball for him. So I'm just
It's
wondering.
it's hard because it's the same thing in college football. Would you rather have the freshman who's going to come in and has an ego, i.e., a Darren Peterson? Granted, he might be a better player, but it's not as coachable. Or would you rather have basically a grown man against children? I think it makes sense why he's doing it that way. I also do think that it's his second year. He hasn't had time to establish his recruiting process, how he's going to go about getting these guys the proper way. Izzo's had time. Izzo, he's built a reputation at Michigan State. Dusty May hasn't had time to do that. And, I do think he can recruit some good players. He brought LJ Kaysen with him from FAU. I don't know if Boyd was a transfer when he was there or if Golden was a transfer, but he's good at finding talent no matter how. No matter how he does it, he's good at finding the talent. So It's the same. It's like saying that Indiana in football bought their team instead of built it. Okay, but did they win? Yes. So does it matter how you built it? Not really. If you win,
Well, to many blue blood program fans that are kind of what I think are jealous of Michigan. I mean, not only fans, are coaches too. You see Izzo and how the way he treats Dusty May in both press conferences and on the court. Obviously, there's some sort of hateful relationship between them. I don't know. I haven't really seen that from Dusty May. I've only seen it from Tom Izzo's side, but it has to be some sort of jealousy that because there's no other way to explain it.
I don't
Coming
know.
in
I think you're
and
hitting
changing
it
an 8 and
nail
24
on the.
program
Yeah, I think you're
into
nailing
three.
the nail on the head. I it's if this was happening to, let's say UCLA or any of these other blue blood programs like a Michigan State, like a Duke, they're doing the same thing. I mean, you would complain that they're doing it, but because it's happening to someone else and not you, it's really really easy to complain. Same thing happened in football. Same thing happened with Indiana. I'm saying that Michigan is essentially doing the Iowa strategy, but in basketball, or the Indiana strategy in basketball, and it's working. It's working. That's why they're doing it, because they saw that it can work, and it's been working for like 2 years for Indiana. So
Yeah, and I honestly don't know. Obviously, you've seen this team; they're really connected. If you care about progress as individuals and developing players, every single one of these players has developed immensely under Dusty. Uh, Even Jax Lendenborg just became so much smarter of a player. Like if you compare him to, his role at UAB and how he played there, and as an individual as well. Um, Obviously, academically, they're all doing great. Obviously, I think 8 players made the All Academic Big Ten team.
hold on, can we talk
Um,
about Adaimara being a Spanish major? Like, what is he? What is he learning? What what
okay,
what exactly is he learning? Like, I saw that one. I'm like, okay, if you're not on the honor roll, that's just embarrassing. Anyways, please continue.
no, 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 yeah, no. But I mean, I guess Adaimara seems like a pretty smart individual.
He's
The
from
way he
Spain.
acts.
It's like going.
No, no,
It's like
I
going to Spain and becoming an English major for you and I.
it's all these athletes that are going to the NBA, they're not trying to get a degree or actually get develop a strength in a field because it's just simply not going to be their job. I think it's more so the fact that they're going to class, they're not doing in Alabama and or Georgia. The SEC is very notorious for just not caring about not just academics, but like literally people, human lives. I mean, like you saw what happened with a Holloway at Bama. He's not going to play this tournament because of him being
Virginia just
found with
lost, by the
weed.
way, in case you're curious. So it would be Tennessee or Iowa State who
Let's see
they have to
Iowa
go
State,
against.
right? If we beat Bama or Texas Tech, but yeah, you just don't see. I mean, players like Caleb Love and who else? There was a couple. Terrence Shannon, not too long ago. All those players were committed to Michigan before the admissions process kicked them out. And everyone has to go through that process. And Michigan's is unlike any other in the country. So to say that, there's sort of that like that this isn't college, that they don't care about the players, they just care about the program and winning is simply false. And I would argue that it wouldn't be possible to care about winning in the program if you don't care about the development of players because no one would want to come to the school. Even transfers wouldn't want to come to the school. And we've seen that money wasn't the main reason why people came because Yaxel was going to get 3 times more money if he went to Kentucky, but he still chose Michigan over it because Dusty May's main recruiting strategy was not discussing money with anybody. It was talking basketball, their role in the team, and what he wanted them to improve on, and what their goals were as a basketball program to begin with, and not money. So hearing all this hate from fans around, if imagine this was your team, right? Put yourselves in a Michigan fan's shoes. You would not be complaining, and frankly, I wouldn't be hating on your team either, because
Listen, I also don't
it's
think they would be
really
hating if it was like, let's say, I'm just gonna pick a random team from the bracket here. Like if it was Akron who got this in influx of cash or influx of talent, like a team like that, you'd be rooting for them. But because it's Michigan, because they have a spotlight on them, because
It's
it would
every
happen. It would happen with any big
they
program. It would happen with any
they
big
hate
program.
us because they ain't us is the term that I'm gonna use, and it's quite obvious that especially with I know individuals from that go to Michigan, either go to Michigan State or Michigan State fans. There's a common theme amongst all of them, the like just the inferiority complex. And I might sound like a douche here. I might sound like whatever. I'll just say like an asshole. But it's something you notice. All right, like we as Michigan students, as Michigan fans, I would say more so students. We don't try to push our way into anybody or discuss things. Discuss show our superiority complex, I guess. But what?
From an outsider's perspective, right? I'm
Right.
I'm one who has I am not a Michigan State individual. I am not a Michigan individual. I go to a
Right.
third party school. What I've
Sure.
heard, is that Michigan State definitely doesn't have the talent academically, but Michigan also has a sort of superiority complex in terms of the way they do things, some of the people there, which is why
You only you only hear that from Michigan State or Ohio State, or you only hear it from rival schools, and it it begs me to question, why you don't only hear that in academics, you hear that in football, you hear that in hockey now too, you hear that in basketball. And it's the same thing for every single, like, I guess this isn't a sports podcast. You hear that in every single athletic, with from every single athletic program and every single sport that Michigan does well at. It's like, oh well, all these Michigan fans, all these Michigan players think they're superior to us. Well, maybe it's because you guys care and we don't. So again, I'm not gonna go too far into that, but when I hear people, and obviously Dusty May has talked about it too, when he hears people talk about the program like that and hate on our morals, which I mean, the athletic department has its problems, sure, I agree with that, but
like
when it comes to
it's
our
the most
success
problematic in the
and
country.
diminishing it, it's just not realistic, and I think it should be people should reconsider their positions on the topic.
I'll move on to another school in Michigan with potentially a troubled athletic department in Michigan State, which is the one thing you held over them is that your coaches had never touched anyone, and here we are. I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean not anymore, but
not anymore, but Michigan State, I think they've looked like they've looked how they have all season. And in my eyes, it's that lack of 3-point shooting. It's that lack of having a secondary scorer behind Jeremy Fears that's going to cost them in this tournament. Okay, so first round they get through North Dakota State. They were supposed to. They put on a good performance. That's exactly what you needed to see out of them in that first game. That second game against Louisville, many people were oh my goodness, were predicting the USF upset here, including us in our bracket. In my individual one, I had changed it to Louisville because I saw some further, research on that. But the USF players, let me tell you, they were confident in this. I think there was a USF player who went 4 of 17, said something egregious about Louisville before and didn't show up in that game. So, anyways, Louisville moved on. And Michigan State, it was a close game, but it never looked like Michigan State was going to lose that game. And here's the big difference between Michigan and Michigan State, in my opinion. I know we say that Michigan has a lot of chemistry off the court, but on the court, Michigan State, there's just some things that I see out of them
against
that
Iowa.
you would only see out of a team that has been playing together for 2-3 years at a time. And I'm just going to point to one example late in the game. Jeremy Fears is driving to the basket. I think he's going up for a floater, right? But lo and behold, in the dunker spot, he's actually throwing a lob to Cohen Carr, who gets fouled on it. And I think everyone in that stadium thought he was shooting that shot, except for Cohen Carr, who knew where to be. And that only comes with playing with guys for 2-3 years, knowing who they're going to be, knowing where they're going to be, knowing like everything about them in practice, it's just you can't buy chemistry. And I'm not saying that Michigan has bought chemistry because obviously they are a tight-knit group of guys. And even, you see some of Michigan's problems on the court with Elliot Cadeau throwing no-look passes to the stands. And obviously you see that from Michigan State, but they look like a more cohesive unit. They know how to use their talent better, in my opinion, as in they know how to utilize. They don't have as much talent as Michigan, so it's harder to win games. I think that's just a fact. I think you're Tom Izzo, you're given Michigan's roster, you would take it 10 out of 10 times over the group of guys you have right now if there was no emotional connection, right? But he's coached these guys, he's raised them as men, and he's
Okay, well,
got them to the
I
Sweet
just need
16.
to interject. If Tom Izzo impacted how they act as men and as, outside of just basketball ability, then I think he did a poor job. But yeah, continue. I don't think it's his fault, but
He takes a chance on a lot of guys, and it's a matter of, are you willing to listen and instill his ideology, or are you going to go somewhere else and try your luck? Like we saw that with Trevor Booker. We've seen that with that Cohen Carr stayed, even though he could have gone anywhere else, gotten more minutes. But no, he was
could have been drafted by now. By the way, if he was coached by any other coach really in the Big Ten, I think he would have been in the NBA. And I need to interject here, Mark, because this has been again, this is from my perspective. I'm sort of being the devil's advocate here. Tom Izzo has been, I guess it's only fair that I bring this up because I brought up popular critiques about Michigan's team. Tom Izzo has very often been accused by fan bases such as Michigan's fan base. I won't say that I haven't thought about this either. That he is only he only is said to develop players per se because he keeps them at the program because he doesn't when they're freshmen, when they're 5-star freshmen, when they're 5-star sophomores, he doesn't play them. He has them come off the bench and doesn't give them a large role, so they are forced to stay. And then they proceed to play for 3 or 4 years and get underwhelming or not draft position or not get drafted at all when they were very much clearly projected to be drafted. And it's happened a lot. I mean,
he's produced 20 plus first rounders. He's produced Hall of Famers. Draymond Green is going to be in the Hall of Fame. Jaren Jackson's a very good player. I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer yet, but there's definitely talent. Denzel Valentine. Oh my goodness.
Sure, but all of those players were already projected. I can't think of a player that he's coached up to be an NBA prospect. I can only coach of NBA prospects that he's, coached down to become college merchants. And yeah, I guess that's what the take is. There's obviously some validity to that, regardless of who you are as a fan. I think you need to agree with that claim to some extent, because if you look at, I mean, obviously the main comparison here is between Michigan and Michigan State. If you look at Michigan, Morris Johnson Jr. and Di Mara weren't considered to they weren't even thought of being draft prospects. They didn't even they played less than 20 minutes a game last season for both their respective teams. And they come into Michigan, and now Morris Johnson is on the verge of becoming a lottery pick, and Adimar is also projected first round. And then also Jax Lendenborg was projected to be second round or late first round. Now he's also a lottery pick. So, and even last year you saw the same thing from Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden. So, there's it's obviously a very small sample size, so I can't say too much. But again, players like Cohen Carr, like Jeremy Fears, they're going to stay there for all 4 years of college. Cohen Carr isn't going to get drafted. Jeremy Fears isn't going to get drafted. Cassius Winston was a player that played for Michigan State for forever, and he is playing in Israel right now or somewhere, in that side of the world. And yeah, again, sure, Jaren Jackson, Draymond Green, those are very heavily recruited players that were very clearly 5 stars. You won't
So now
find a player
you're
like
punishing him for
Daniel Wolf or
coaching.
Vlad
Hold on. So
Golden.
now you're punishing
That
him for coaching up players or coaching players
he
who are five
coached. I'm
stars.
saying he didn't coach the players up. He just
But you're
coaches so
using the
that they're
fact that he
safe.
has recruited against him when the whole argument here was that he does do the recruiting better than just the transfers.
Well, no, I'm not saying. I'm saying Michigan State has done better at recruiting players statistically. Like if you look at recruitment boards, they've ranked above Michigan like 80% of the time. Besides, that first Juwan Howard year, for example, but Juwan Howard is a heavy exception. Like when you compare Beeline and Izzo has recruited better. For whatever reason, it could be program reputation, it could be the way he convinced players, it could be who knows, maybe he was utilizing the NIL when it was illegal, like many SEC schools did, and now is jealous that everyone is at the same level. Going back to that, but he's generally speaking, he's done worse with better talent. And I don't know where the whole thing that he's done the best with the least amount of talent has come from at all. I have no clue. Michigan State since his championship in 2001 has out recruited, and gotten better talent than most programs in the country if you average it out throughout those 20 years. And that simply hasn't led to anything. I mean, he hasn't been in a national championship since then. Michigan has been to two in the last decade. So, and I can say this, I can compare them with any school. I'm just comparing them with Michigan because again, we're a Michigan, state, Michigan, the region based podcast. I don't really know where that argument comes from. Again, also Mr. March, where does that argument come from? I can keep going, right? And this is not me hating on Izzo. It's just again me being the devil's advocate and sort of arguing against the point you were just making. As for chemistry, I would argue Michigan with a completely new starting lineup has had better team chemistry and a better ability to play as a team than Michigan State has. Michigan State has run through one player and one player only. People wonder why Jeremy Fears averages 10 assists per game. Maybe it's because he's the only player on the team that generates any sort of offense. So again, I don't team chemistry wise, no, it's Jeremy Fears. He's a great player. So again, I would argue against what you just said.
I would argue against your take, but we'll see next year. They're bringing in the top recruiting class in terms of young talent.
Yeah.
So Ethan Taylor's going to play minutes. Kohler and Cooper are going to be.
He's probably going to play like 20 minutes a game. Well,
that's just if he doesn't play minutes, just Jesse McCullough is not better than him. I do think there's a chance Jesse McCullough transfers, and not just because it's a bad situation for him, but he's bad. He's not a good player. So if you think Izzo's going to go out of his way to transfer in another big man to then take away minutes from his big guy?
Izzo's not going to transfer anybody in, bro. Izzo's not going to use. He's made it clear he doesn't want to use the transfer portal because he thinks that's some sort of like devilish move.
He brought in Cam Ward.
No, he didn't.
Oh no,
Michigan State had Michigan
he
State
brought in
Bill,
Divine Ugochukwu. That's what I'm thinking of.
We didn't. No, he didn't. No, he didn't bring in any transfers. Nope. All the 4 transfers that he brought in, which is by the way the same amount as Michigan, don't exist. They're all high school recruited.
Divine Ugochukwu and Trey Fort. Trey Fort, who is a terrorist.
Izzo developed them. That's
Divine Ugochukwu and Trey Fort.
Not my words, Mark. It's Michigan State fans' words.
Anyways,
I'm quoting them. Built, not bought.
Anyways, it's.
I'll be surprised to see if Ethan Taylor even has a chance of being drafted at the end of next season. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays all 4 years at Michigan State and gets the Elite Eight routinely and then loses and doesn't win any big games. Because that's been a trend for the past 20 years.
Wasn't Chase Richardson one and done? And got drafted?
Yeah, he was
in the first round.
Yeah, he was. He does he even play in the NBA, by the way?
He does. He's on a good Magic team right now. I'm just trying to look at more examples here. I'm just going through year by year, and I guess 2020 is a really
0 minutes, 7 minutes, 0 minutes, 5 minutes, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Yeah, he plays. Vlad Golden, who from FAU, who's like a two-star coming out of high school, has had more minutes than him. So much for developing NBA talent. I mean, you can look at the NBA right now. There's like 20 players from Michigan that are in the NBA. There's like three from Michigan State, or four. They
wait.
get they get they get minutes.
Foster Lawyer
So
was recruited in 2018.
Foster Lawyer,
Oh, I'm thinking of the wrong guy. I thought it was that one guy from Purdue.
uh,
Um,
Fletcher Lawyer, Fletcher
Fletcher.
no, Foster
Yeah,
Lawyer.
that's where I got
Yeah,
confused. That's where I got confused. That's where I got confused.
yeah, okay.
But anyways, I think we got a little off topic there, but it's a good discussion to have. Let us know what you guys think. Do you think Izzo's doing it in a pure way, or is Dusty way just Dusty's way better? It's a whole thing. Like Indiana showed that one kid that buying people can work in.
And everyone was fine with it too, for the most part, at least compared to Michigan. So,
And here's the thing:
yeah.
Indiana also, I think, spent the most on basketball operations this year. And where are they? They're not in this tournament.
Oh, Michigan State spends more money than Michigan on NIL, by the way, too. So if you want to go off the whole pay to win thing, you can't really do that either. Although, again, there's an agenda, so it has confirmation bias and all. It has to be true. Same thing with zero trans. Izzo didn't bring in. All of a sudden, Ugochukwu is irrelevant because he was a transfer. Even though a couple weeks ago you were saying how important he is to the team, but. I digress. Yeah, I guess you can go ahead and finish up the conversation.
Yeah, well, looking ahead, they have to deal with either UCLA or UConn. We said that game would come down to the injuries. It looks like Tyler Bilodeau, even if he does play, is going to be banged up. Donovan Dent didn't look his usual self in that first round against UCF. So it seems like they may have to go against a Dan Hurley UConn team who, had a close game against Furman. But, anything can happen in March. If UCLA makes it through that, it's still going to be a scary matchup. Either one of these teams is a very scary matchup for Michigan State. And then, if they get past that round, they have to beat Duke or St. John's, both teams who have, really good coaching there in Rick Pitino, along with John Shire as well. But, Duke has looked vulnerable a lot throughout this tournament. In the first half, they've done the Michigan. They've been playing really poorly in the first half. Siena was up for a lot of that game. TCU kept it close at halftime, but second half comes along. Duke was down 14, and they turned that game around against Siena to win by 6 points. So I have them winning it all in my bracket. So I have high hopes, high expectations for that team. And honestly, the way St. John's is playing, with Etchafor. What was he, the Big East player of the year, Big East defensive player of the year? Oh my God, he just shut down Darren Peterson. There was nothing he could do. If he does the same thing to Jeremy Fears, I'm sorry, but Michigan State, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. Your whole offense revolves around him. The 3 minutes that Denim Wojcik gets a game are just terrible. That's what you're watching. You're just watching literal terrible. So
Harvard transfer himself. Oh, another transfer. But yeah.
Yeah, when Izzo decides to use the portal, it does work. Simone Zipala came in. He was Michigan State's offense for a year. Among others, Frankie Fiddler, he brought in through the transfer portal from Omaha. He knows how to use it, but he chooses to develop it. And I think he needs to mix in more transfers to compete at a higher level. But next year will be very telling for this Michigan State program. I honestly think if it doesn't go the way a lot of people see it will, that it will be Izzo's last year. Because I just don't think he can... If his unwillingness to use the portal will be his fall. As much as I do think he's a very great coach, don't get me wrong, there's only so many people who win a national championship and have that many first-round picks. If you can't adapt to the modern game, then, happens in every industry, not just sports. You're kind of a goner. So,
yep, I think he's in the same generation of coaches as Dan Hurley, Mick Cronin. Those sort of coaches that are just they just have a stubbornness to feel like they're proving something by not, changing their ways of recruiting and coaching. And in life in general, but I mean especially in sports, having that sort of quality about yourself rarely works out. And if it does, it makes it so much harder for things to be successful. So, um, again, maybe with like even the what $1 billion donation that Michigan State received towards its NIL fund recently, hope maybe that'll change some things. Get Izzo going. Maybe the fact that he saw that Dusty May just owned him this year in both matchups that'll motivate him to think about not being his stubborn self again. But I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't change his ways because of it feels if he just wants to prove something that doesn't exist. And Michigan State fans all would agree with me on this. A lot of them would rather that you can't look into the like if you were going into the computer science field right now and you were saying that AI is bad, right? I can't use AI because it's going to take all of our jobs. It's immoral, right?
You're
Everyone would call
falling
you
behind.
stupid. You're falling behind. Everyone would call you stupid. You wouldn't get a job. Um, and I think you could think of athletics in college the same sort of way. Um, and if Izzo and others like him don't want to change, then so be it. Matt Painter is that same generation of coaches, but he wants to win. He doesn't, have a tunnel vision mind, and he did recruit. I mean, he got Oscar Clough from the transfer portal. He definitely he's pushed for transfers. His style of game changed into a more modern one. And you obviously have, seen Purdue be very successful recently. The last couple of years, they've been the best consistent team from the Big Ten. Um, Same thing with Brad Underwood, right? He's going into Europe and recruiting guys, and it's working out. Obviously, not as much as he wants to, maybe, but still, his team is very good because of it. So if Izzo wants to keep on, putting in triple the effort to get the same results, he's just going to retire. He's just going to run out of fuel and retire faster. And for his sake, I think it would be better to, maybe adopt a little. But that's just my take.
I mean, you know, can't teach an old dog new tricks, but he's a very, very smart old dog, if that's how I'm going to put it. Um, high hopes for both Michigan teams. I do think that they both have a chance to make it out of the Sweet 16. Michigan definitely has a higher chance to make it out of the Elite Eight, I would say. Michigan State has to go against Duke, who I don't think, I guess maybe in the recent form, Michigan has a good chance against, but, we saw Duke beat both of these teams this year, so wouldn't be surprised if it happened again, as unfortunate as that is. But I will move on to our final topic of the day, and I'll just go briefly over the state of F1. So I like doing the F1 topic, like I'm just kind of explaining to you what's happening, like I'm telling a story here. So here's my story time, right? As you know, there is, to put it lightly, conflict in the Middle East. The F1 was about to go to Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, which are front and center of that region, as your geography would tell you there. However, they decided to cancel both of those Grand Prix, rightfully so. You don't want to put hundreds of thousands of.
I think they shouldn't be that scared. Come on, man.
I don't think you want to put
that.
any of the hundreds of thousands of people's lives in danger who come to the events, in danger, or any of the drivers or any of the teams, or blah blah blah. There's just so much
Moving targets. That's
so
all I'm
much
saying.
more to be lost than to gain in those scenarios. So now there is no race in the month of April. There's a whole month break. Usually that happens in like the summer or something, and it's only 3 weeks, but for the first time in a very long time, there's not going to be F1 for a whole month in the middle of the race season. Regardless, we do have a race next week in Japan. A lot of drivers love this circuit. A lot of drivers, this is what they grew up with. They've seen a lot of things happen here. But last year, it was essentially like follow the leader. You couldn't pass. You couldn't do anything. The cars were too big, too much downforce, too much drag, too much, blah, 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 blah. This year, we've seen that you can pass people. You've seen that there is a way, there's racing to be had, even if it's artificial in a way. But the whole problem that the FIA has to address is the braking and downshifting on the straights. You don't get to see a car just go flat out for a whole straight anymore. Let's say in Australia, that first race of the year, very energy dependent circuit. You're not going to have as much braking, so you're not going to have as much battery because they use energy collection from the rear axle from when you brake to collect kinetic energy. So as you slow down, the car connects energy, charges the battery. Following?
Yeah.
He's following. So this year, the car is half combustion engine, half battery in terms of power. So there's like 540 horsepower, and you can get about, I think it was in the 300s of watts of energy from your battery at any given time. And the drivers have described it as basically a mushroom from Mario Kart if you press the overtake button. That is how they've described it. But what happens is the battery system, there's not enough ways to recuperate energy to make the battery last long enough for it to be impactful for a long time, because you use it on a straight and then, you make the pass and you have to downshift early to collect energy because you don't have the rear axle is just not a good enough way to get your sole way of collecting energy. Anyways, FIA has to do something about that. I don't know if it's just getting the MGUH, I think it was called, back. The one that was in the engine that takes some of that heat energy and turns it into electrical energy. Or doing something with the front axle to get some energy from that. But, there's always how are we going to manipulate this and get an advantage? Which I think is such a stupid argument from the FIA, because that's literally the whole point of the sport, is how to manipulate something to get, literally a tenth of a second of speed over someone. That is literally what the sport is built around. But anyways, Japan, very iconic circuit, not energy dependent as much. Should provide some good racing, especially with this year's regulations. But there's not much that has changed from last race in China. So I'm just gonna give you my top three. I think qualifying is gonna go George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli, and race finalists podium will be George Russell, Kimi Antonelli, Charles Leclerc. It's gonna be the same thing that happened last week. McLaren, I don't even know if they're fast. They've been getting faster and faster every week. But guess what? Neither of them raced last time because they had unrelated electrical issues that stem from the same problem with the battery, which makes no sense.
Nope.
So both of the cars could not start and did not race. I don't know. It's a very interesting season. And my last thing, RB, who is technically a Detroit product because they use Ford powertrains, they are bringing a special livery. So if you want to look that one up, it's pretty cool, pretty nice. One of the Red Bull teams always likes to do something for that. Last year around this time is when Yuki Tsunoda, who was the one Japanese driver on the grid last year, got into the Red Bull seat because the other Red Bull driver, Liam Lawson, he did really poor the first two races, which everyone in the paddock thought was harsh, but, I digress. But I really, 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 really hope that there is something that the FIA does in this whole month period to balance out the racing, balance out the battery, and make it so it's not completely just like a Mercedes running away with it, which they should be. They have won the development battle. But the customer teams in Alpine, in McLaren, in Williams, they have the same engine. They have the same power unit, but they're not able to extract as much out of it, which is frankly insane. Mm-hmm. And of those three teams, you would think it's McLaren who's getting the best performance, but no. I would say Alpine has looked the best out of the customer teams, which is crazy because, they have resources. They are Renault. This is a subsidiary of them. They're sort of, how do I put this? If they're Lexus to a Honda, that is what Alpine is.
Yeah.
But yeah, they clearly have resources. McLaren has shown that they can develop into it. So they'll start slow, and then hopefully they have another upgrade package like 2023 end of, where they just look absolutely monstrous look monstrous to end that year. I'm a big McLaren fan. Started watching before Cadillac got in, but now we are Cadillac supporters. We all are Cadillac supporters, and all I can hope for from Cadillac is that both of the racers finish. We haven't had two Cadillacs cross the line yet this year, and unless they did in Australia, let me double check because I don't want to be wrong. But I'm just gonna make sure. But I don't think
It's gonna be a while though.
Oh no, they both did.
Gonna be a
No.
while.
I'm so sorry. Valtteri Bottas did not finish, but Checo Perez did. But he was 3 laps down. I'm really hoping that if both cars can finish on the lead lap, that I've seen a good amount of progress from Cadillac. And now one last thing I'll check before I'll let us go is just the forecast of what's going to happen. It's going to be a dry race. So, again, my predictions don't stand. It'll be the exact same. Granted, if there was rain or something that you could see, at that point, it's not who has the best car, but who's the best driver. And that's where Max Verstappen shines. That's where these drivers from Cadillac, they have a lot of experience. Older guys have done this for 10 plus years each. So, yeah. Cadillac just finish on the lead lap, and I'll be happy. I just need to see some progress. Other than that, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Two Benchwarmers. One of our, unfortunately, Austin couldn't make it, but, the show must go on.
His input on the whole Michigan State conversation would have been interesting, and we might, continue that a little
next week to get his take on it.
Next week. Yeah.
Hopefully both teams are still in. Best of luck to all of them. Best of luck to the Pistons without Cade. But follow us on all of our shows on our socials. They'll be on screen. And until next week.